you reread one text like it might reveal the whole relationship. A slower reply suddenly changes your mood. One warm message makes your chest unclench. One cold sentence can stay with you all day. Love reaches places logic doesn't. But it usually follows a pattern. That's what attachment styles help explain. Why closeness feels easy for some people. Why it feels thrilling and scary for others. Why you chase. Why you shut down. Why the same relationship story keeps returning in different faces. By the end of this, you'll understand the 4 attachment styles and love, and what each one is quietly trying to protect. And here's the first thing to remember. Your attachment style is not your personality, and it is not your fate. It's a pattern your heart learned around closeness, distance, reassurance, conflict, and the question of whether love feels safe. It shapes how you read silence, how quickly you worry, and how much space feels comforting or threatening. That's why 2 people can live through the same moment and feel completely different things inside it. Another hears the same sentence and feels a wave of loss before anything has even happened. Here's what's really going on. Attachment is less about being dramatic or detached, and more about what your body expects connection to feel like. If closeness once felt steady, love may feel easier to trust. If closeness felt inconsistent, even good love can stir a bold alarm. Let's start with secure attachment. Secure attachment usually looks like emotional steadiness, not emotional perfection. A secure person can love deeply without assuming every conflict means the relationship is in danger. They can miss you without panicking and need space without turning that space into a mystery. When something feels off, they usually reach for communication before they reach for conclusions. Because healthy love is not the absence of hard moments. It's the presence of repair, clarity, and enough safety to stay honest when hard moments arrive. A securely attached partner tends to believe closeness can be warm, mutual, and breathable. They don't need constant distance to feel free, and they don't need constant reassurance to feel held. If they care, you usually know it. Not because they perform affection perfectly, but because their behavior is easier to trust over time. Their words and actions tend to move in the same direction. That consistency can feel almost strange if you're used to more emotional turbulence. Sometimes secure love gets mistaken for boring in the beginning. Not because it lacks depth, but because peace is quieter than confusion and calm doesn't create the same rush. Secure attachment often makes room for intimacy without making either person disappear inside the relationship. There is closeness with boundaries, care without control, and honesty without cruelty dressed up as truth. A secure person may still get jealous, hurt, scared, or overwhelmed sometimes. They can say, "That stung," without turning one painful moment into proof that love is unsafe. They can apologize without collapsing and forgive without pretending nothing mattered. So if you've ever felt truly relaxed with someone, secure attachment may be part of what you were feeling. It's the deep relief of not having to guess where you stand. Now let's move to anxious attachment. Anxious attachment is not simply caring too much. It's often a strong sensitivity to changes in closeness, availability, and the possibility of being left emotionally alone. An anxiously attached person may notice everything. The pause before a reply, the shorter message, the different tone, the hesitation in someone's voice. Little shifts can feel big because connection matters so deeply to them. Love can feel beautiful, but uncertainty can feel unbearable. So they may seek reassurance, replay conversations, overthink silence, or reach for closeness the second distance appears. Not because they enjoy drama, but because their system is trying to prevent loss before loss becomes real. A simple scene might look like this. Someone you love says they need a quiet night, and your mind instantly wonders whether they are slipping away. Another person hears a schedule update, while an anxious system often hears danger. This isn't just clinginess. It's often your attachment system asking for certainty because uncertainty feels heavier than it looks from the outside. The strategy makes emotional sense even when it creates more anxiety instead of less. Because reassurance can help for a minute, then fade quickly. You finally feel calm, then one ambiguous moment pulls you right back into fear again. That cycle is exhausting, especially when part of you knows you might be overreading things, but your body still reacts first. And yet anxious attachment also comes with real strengths. These people often love warmly, notice emotional shifts quickly, and bring tenderness, devotion, and care into relationships when they feel safe. The goal is not to become less loving. It's to stop letting fear run the entire conversation between your heart and someone else's actions. That can mean pausing before chasing certainty, asking directly for reassurance, and remembering that discomfort is not always danger. Here comes the twist many people miss. Anxious attachment does not only fear being unloved, it often fears the helplessness of not knowing where love stands. That is why mixed signals can feel almost addictive. The uncertainty hurts, but it also keeps the system activated and searching for resolution. If this sounds like you, you're not alone, and I'd love to know which part feels most familiar. Now let's look at avoidant attachment, the style that often protects itself by stepping back. Avoidant attachment usually doesn't announce itself as fear. It often shows up as independence, emotional restraint, and a strong need for personal space. An avoidantly attached person may enjoy connection until closeness starts asking for deeper vulnerability or more visible dependence. Then something inside them tightens. They may pull back after intimacy, go vague during conflict, or act like everything is fine when something clearly isn't. Sometimes they care deeply and still struggle to make that care feel reachable to another person. That can be intensely confusing because the feeling may be real while access to that feeling stays guarded. A person with avoidant attachment often learned that relying on others felt risky, disappointing, or emotionally costly. So safety starts to look like self-containment. Needing less and staying in control can feel safer than being visibly affected. In early dating, this can look very attractive. They seem calm, capable, mysterious, and untouched by the kind of emotional chaos many people want to escape. But deeper intimacy changes the pressure inside the bond. So instead of leaning in, they may retreat. Not always physically. Sometimes emotionally, through delay, deflection, humor, logic, busyness, or a sudden drop in warmth. Here's a scene many people recognize. You share something vulnerable and the other person answers with advice, a joke, or silence instead of emotional presence. That response can feel cold, even when it isn't meant to be cruel. Avoidant attachment is often the protection of feeling, not the absence of it. The wall exists because something inside learned that closeness could become overwhelming, exposing, or disappointing. Still, protection has a price. The more someone avoids dependence, the harder it can become to experience intimacy as safe instead of consuming. They may long for love while resisting the very openness that allows love to deepen. If you've been on the receiving end, it can make you question yourself. You may start shrinking your needs, softening your voice, and working for tiny pieces of reassurance. But often the deeper issue is not your worth. It's the other person's relationship to vulnerability. It can save you from believing you're too much when the real story is emotional self-protection. Now we come to fearful-avoidant attachment, the style that often feels most confusing from the inside and outside. Fearful-avoidant attachment carries both a hunger for closeness and a fear of what closeness might do. The person may deeply want intimacy, then flinch from it once it starts to feel real. They move toward love and away from love in the same relationship. That creates a push-pull dynamic that can feel intense, magnetic, and destabilizing at the same time. One day they seem deeply open and the next they seem guarded, overwhelmed, or suddenly far away. They may miss you intensely when distance appears, then feel trapped when closeness returns too quickly. Their system is torn between longing for connection and trying to survive connection. A small moment can show it clearly. They finally get the reassurance they wanted, then feel suspicious, flooded, or oddly numb once they receive it. Love lands, but safety doesn't fully land with it, so the bond never feels simple. When closeness has felt unpredictable, love can trigger comfort and alarm in the same heartbeat. That can produce fast shifts, mixed signals, and reactions that confuse even the person having them. Fearful-avoidant attachment often creates chemistry people describe as unforgettable. Not because it is always healthy, but because uncertainty and longing can fuse together very quickly. This is where many people confuse activation for compatibility. A connection can feel faded and still be deeply destabilizing. A relationship can feel intense and still be built around fear rather than safety. That's hard to admit when the bond feels rare, but naming it clearly is a form of kindness. Because sometimes the strongest pull in love is not toward peace, it's toward familiarity. And familiar does not always mean good for you. So how do these styles tend to interact with each other? Secure and secure often create the least confusion, with room for affection, misunderstanding, repair, and mutual trust. Secure and anxious can work beautifully when reassurance is sincere and growth is shared. The anxious partner feels steadier, and the secure partner usually doesn't fear emotional closeness. Secure and avoidant can work too, but only if openness is practiced rather than avoided. One grounded partner can model safety, but they cannot carry the entire emotional relationship alone. Anxious and avoidant is one of the most common painful pairings. One person reaches for reassurance while the other feels pressure and retreats, creating more anxiety and more pursuit. Suddenly, both people are protecting themselves while calling it love. If you've ever felt addicted to mixed signals, this dynamic may be part of the ache. It can feel electric because both systems activate each other so strongly. But activation is not the same thing as emotional safety. Anxious and fearful avoidant can become deeply bonded, then deeply destabilized, because closeness and alarm both rise quickly together. Avoidant and fearful avoidant can create mystery, inconsistency, and emotional distance that leaves much unsaid but still deeply felt. Without awareness, people repeat the same dance and call it destiny. With awareness, they can start choosing differently. That leads to the question almost everyone asks next: can attachment styles change? Yes, they can. Not all at once, and not by pretending your reactions are smaller than they are. But attachment can shift the repeated experiences of honesty, safety, consistency, boundaries, and repair. A lot of these patterns were learned in relationship, and a lot of healing happens there too. For an anxious person, growth may mean staying grounded during uncertainty without turning uncertainty into proof of abandonment. It may mean asking clearly for closeness instead of protesting, over-pursuing, or reading every pause as a verdict. For an avoidant person, growth may mean staying emotionally present a little longer when vulnerability starts to feel uncomfortable. It may mean naming feelings before they harden into distance. For a fearful avoidant person, growth may mean noticing the urge to cling or bolt, then slowing the cycle down. It may mean learning that closeness can be chosen carefully without losing safety or self-respect. And for secure people, growth still matters too. It can mean keeping healthy boundaries while loving someone whose attachment fears are still very active. But here's an important line inside all of this hope. Understanding someone's attachment style is not the same as excusing repeated disrespect, dishonesty, or emotional harm. Compassion matters, and so do standards. You can understand a pattern and still decide a relationship is too painful to keep carrying. That is not failure. That is self-respect. How you say goodnight, handle a misunderstanding, assume the worst, or ask for reassurance or a little space. Those moments may seem small, but they quietly create the emotional climate of a relationship. And emotional climate matters more than grand gestures usually do. Sometimes people keep chasing spark while ignoring climate. They want chemistry without asking whether the relationship actually lets them exhale. Mature love often feels less like guessing and more like knowing where you stand. Less performance, more truth, less decoding, more communication, and less fear that one wrong move will make affection disappear. If you are starting to recognize yourself in one of these styles, try not to turn it into a trap. Let it become a lens instead. A gentler way to understand what happens inside you when closeness feels uncertain, precious, or threatening. Because the goal is not to become flawless at love. It's to become more honest inside it. More honest about what activates you, what calms you, and which relationships feel exciting because they are right or familiar. If secure love feels unfamiliar, you may not recognize it right away. It may feel slower, less dramatic, and less consuming. But unfamiliar does not mean empty. Sometimes unfamiliar is exactly what allows your heart to stay whole. So when you think about attachment, don't only ask who attracts you. Also ask what kind of love brings out the most grounded version of you. What kind of connection helps you relax instead of perform? What kind of person makes honesty feel safer than strategy? Those questions can completely reshape how you choose. Because deep compatibility is not just chemistry. It's emotional reality. It's whether closeness becomes a place where both people can tell the truth and still stay connected. If this helped you understand your own pattern more clearly, like the video and subscribe for more warm, honest psychology about love. There is real freedom in understanding why your heart reacts the way it does, not so you can judge yourself or other people, but so you can love with clearer eyes and less confusion than before. So here's the final takeaway. Secure says, love can be safe. Anxious says, please don't leave me in uncertainty. Avoidant says, please don't make closeness feel like losing myself. Fearful-avoidant says, I want love, but part of me fears what it can awaken. When you hear the need underneath the behavior, people start making more sense. And when you understand your own pattern, love stops feeling like pure mystery. It starts feeling like something you can meet with more awareness, softer fear, and better choices. That doesn't make love simple, but it can make it wiser, and sometimes that wisdom feels exactly like relief.